What we're going to do tonight, as we discussed, we're going to have a workshop to deal with the environmental assessment forms for the Hudson Solar project. And both Art and John are going to assist us with this. Just so everyone understands, this is a workshop. It is not a public hearing. We will not be taking public comment. The public hearing will be reopening again. At the present time, it's scheduled for our next meeting, April 16th, at which time public comment will be taken. Basically, we've had a number of studies done, a number of reviews have been done. Some questions still exist, but what I'd like to do, and I'm going to ask John and Art to jump in whenever they feel it's appropriate on this, so we can buzz right along. And Sharon has recused herself from participating in this review.
And what does it jump in?
Yeah, John, do you want to come up? Yes, sit up here.
Come up or I can sit here, whatever you prefer.
Whatever works for you.
Oh, okay.
I don't mind facing you, you know.
Oh,
Everybody else does, why can't you?
Right.
it's always scary when your attorney doesn't want to sit with you.
I want to see your faces.
All right. What I also had done, it seemed the main questions were still outstanding, have to do with the potential visual impact. So what I did is I went and I got the visual EAF addendum off DEC's website, and it's a two-page little thingy there that I asked Gretchen to make a copy for each of us. So we may want to refer to that as we move along. You've all hopefully seen all the studies that have been done, and you've all been copied on them. We did go through part 1 and 2 once before, and I don't know if the best thing to do is to do that again or go right to part 3. What do Art and feel is the best way to proceed?
Well, you have to
Let me ask, I don't know, at the risk of, I know that it's late and I'm sorry about that, but at the risk of getting too basic, I think that it's a good idea to slow down and sort of reconnect with what it is that your task is with regard to this particular decision. What's in front of you is you're acting as lead agency pursuant to seeker. You're administering state law, okay? And the immediate task in front of you is to issue a determination of significance. You're trying to decide whether this particular application does not present any potential adverse environmental impact, in which case the environmental review can stop. Or you're deciding that one or more potential significant adverse environmental impacts are presented by the project. And the reason that you're doing that, and the structure that's been set up within seeker is in instances where one or more significant potential adverse environmental impacts are presented, a process is established then to allow for two things to happen. One is for further study of the identified impacts to take place within a structure that's been established under seeker. So there are rules for what the applicant needs to do, what the lead agency needs to do, and there's an element of public participation that's provided in that process. And the culmination of that process is a determination of goal findings by the lead agency in which you decide what mitigation, you get a chance to look at the additional study that takes place in an environmental impact statement. And then based on that study, you get to decide whether there are alternatives that need to be examined, and also what needs to be done in order to achieve mitigation to the maximum extent practicable, which is the standard under seeker. Environmental impact statements generally sometimes have a reputation of being something that's very onerous and time-consuming and expensive. And they can be time-consuming and expensive in instances where there is a broad range of potential significant environmental impacts that have been identified. But they don't always encompass a wide range. If the lead agency only identifies one or two significant adverse impacts, then the environmental impact statement is restricted to just a study of those adverse impacts that have been identified. And so what you need really to decide in this instance is that you've received public comment, you've received information that's been provided by the applicant studying some of the issues and the impacts to, based on what I've heard, impacts to aesthetic resources, which can sometimes used interchangeably with visual impact, and impacts to, there's a little bit of overlap also with impacts to community character, which is item 19 on, I think, on part 2 of the EAF. And the board really needs to decide whether the information it's received indicates that there is a significant potential adverse environmental impact which requires further study. And if you do, my recommendation to you is that you should issue a positive declaration that is limited to the issues that you've identified, so that the further study of that issue can take place within the rule framework that's set forth in SEQR, which is essentially you'll have a scoping session in which you'll identify for the applicant and give guidance to the applicant with regard to exactly what you want studied and what the boundaries of that will be. And there'll be a public participation element in the scoping. And then there will be, and then it'll be up to the applicant to do that study and to come back with a draft environmental impact statement which essentially addresses the issues that you've identified and provides the further study that you've required. And in that case, you'll have a chance to let your own consultants take a look at it. The public will have an opportunity to comment on the draft environmental impact statement, and then you can start turning to issues of mitigation to see whether further changes do need to be made to the plan in order to achieve mitigation of the impacts that have been identified. And then you would set forth those in your finding statement.
Okay, is everyone sort of clear on what John said? Art?
Yeah, I have just a couple of points to add to what John said, and maybe just saying it in a little bit different way. John and I are on the same path with respect to the guidance that's been provided the planning board. With respect to aesthetic resources, as John said, we've been talking about that mainly in terms of visual impact, if you will. I'll just offer the overall opinion that the visual analysis that was undertaken is rather spare and not up to speed in terms of current standards, current methodology, etc., and that the breadth of the investigation, as pointed out by some of those who have commented during public hearings, hasn't been as broad as it probably should have been in terms of considering areas from which views of this installation could or might occur. With respect to the matter of community character, I think some of the aspect of community character, which is the second area of environmental impact that I think requires further investigation, might be the area of community character might be otherwise assessed in terms of compliance or non-compliance with the general standards for all special permit uses that are established within the zoning law. The applicant has clearly demonstrated, really documented from his perspective, from their perspective, how the various additional standards that relate to a solar farm have been met, but there's been no effort made at this point in time to deal with the question of how the general standards for all special use permits, all special use permit uses have been met, and those really are primarily community character issues. So I guess the bottom line is, regardless of how you couch it, whether it's additional information, whether it's the outline for a DEIS, those are the two areas that really require further information, assessment, evaluation. It appears that the rest of the items on which the board requested additional information, I believe it was back in mid-October, have been reasonably addressed at this point in time, the biodiversity assessments, the noise assessments, et cetera. But it's these two areas of aesthetic resources and community character that need a little more sharpening before the board is really in the position certainly in the position of clearing this project from a specter of environmental significance.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
How would we define community character? I certainly understand the visual impact, but I'm not sure I totally understand a community character analysis.
I'm going to let you take a shot at that because it's such a broad.
Yeah, I think, and I might be able to find some materials in which that will be able to do a better job than I'm about to do, try to explain that to you. But visual impact alone is not considered to be something that, it's an element of community character, but community character is a larger and less tangible aspect. It's something that really, it's trying to look at the impact on the sense of place and sort of an established feel for a particular area.
I think what I would do is
Use within context.
Yeah.
But a context in a very much broader sort of way.
Yeah,
Environmental, physical, economic, social, the total context of an action.
Yeah. And sort of what the spirit and feel of the particular areas, and to use an absurd illustration, just to make the point, the same project being proposed for maybe a location like Wurtemberg Road, and then also being proposed for Route 9W over the bridge in Kingston, would present two completely, its impact in the context of the location in which it is proposed would be completely different because of the character of the surrounding area. And that will be made up of what the setting is, the amount of traffic, the disturbances that have already been made to the natural environment, everything that goes to whatever all the factors that make up the context of a particular place.
Well, the reason it's a little confusing to me is the town board has decided by putting this law in place that a farm like this is compatible virtually any place in town. I mean, it can be in a residential area, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. Remember that, so zoning is sort of the first cut at a land use policy. Let's look at it in a different context. Let's say that we were talking about a subdivision. And a particular piece of property, zoning says you can have, 100 houses because you have on X number of acres, okay? And what that really gives you is a maximum boundary line for what could be done there. But what happens at the beginning of the process, and In seeker, you have to remember that you are acting as lead agency. You're administering state law when you are fulfilling your responsibilities under seeker. Okay, you're not implementing the laws of the town of Rhinebeck. You're implementing the laws of the state of New York. And what seeker, the policy behind seeker was that we decided as a state that we wanted to figure out what the impacts to the land and the environment were for particular proposed projects at the very beginning of the process, and understand what they were and mitigate those before the process ends up going further. And so getting back to the subdivision illustration, somebody is allowed 100 houses under the zoning law, but you'll, as an approving board for that subdivision, if you become lead agency, you'll start looking at questions about whether the land can carry 100 houses, and maybe it can, but oftentimes it gets determined that maybe you can only have 60 houses there, and there are different reasons that you look at that. There can be steep slopes, there can be soils that don't perk, there are lots of other environmental characteristics that can end up constraining how much development is allowed on that parcel. So connecting that to the discussion we're having about this particular application, the town board has set as a land use policy that, these types of facilities can, they're permitted in almost every zone in the town. But that was done with the understanding that every application that came forward was going to be subject to environmental review pursuant to seeker. And there are going to be instances in seeker where you will decide, you have the power to decide under seeker whether, maybe mitigation, if you determine that there are adverse impacts, sometimes there may not be any, okay? I don't know anything about the Sosnoff solar array, but there seemed to be agreement before that it was something that you couldn't see at all. And,
Oh, you mean the Finder application?
oh, whatever.
Yeah, the little
So,
application today.
But each application that comes in has to get looked at. Everything is reviewed under seeker on a case-by-case basis. And so the town board was anticipating that every application that came forward for a commercial solar facility would undergo a seeker review, and a determination would be made by the lead agency whether the particular property that's involved in the application has the ability to carry that particular use to the full extent, to some partial extent, or maybe not at all.
I think what you want to...
Make any sense to you?
Yeah, and I think what you're referring to, and you and I both referred to, are the general standards for special use permits. It's section 12567, which basically describes some of the things that you were just going into, that you looked at the context within which you asked questions of specific projects and what they might entail. And that is something that we would certainly want the applicant to respond. There are, I don't know how many of these things there are. How many, up through letter N, and however many that is, anyway. And you're going to find that many of the things here do basically respond to what John and Art have both been discussing. So that would certainly...
Just remember that officially you'll be applying that criteria at a later juncture in the review
Right.
process. Right now, you haven't gotten there yet, but I would agree with Art that the substance of the general special use permit criteria happen to dovetail with the kind of things that you would look at when you were assessing compatibility with community character and impacts of community character with regard to a particular use. So it's good guidance for you.
What we have done, we've gone through part one, which is what the applicant submits. And as I recall, back in October, we went through part two, which is how we came up with a list of information that we wanted, that we felt was going to be necessary to respond to some of the questions that we had to deal with. What we can do is go through part one and two again, if everyone would like. Part 3 is basically whether or not we feel any of the things in Part 1 and then our determination in Part 2 are of such significance that they need further study, further review. I don't know how the board would like to proceed.
I'd like to go through the part 1, 2 again, even if it's
Okay.
briefly, just
Okay.
because I think it's been a while and there's been a lot of community comments.
Then what I will,
And it is your responsibility to
Yeah.
fill out part 2 anyways.
Right. So what I'll do is I'll try to read through what we have here in Part 1, and Part 1 is what was submitted to us by the applicant. And basically, under the first section, Section A, basically this describes what the project is, a 432.9 kilowatt solar power plant on a 2.05 acre in size area that would be within the fenced-in area. And it gives the address.
That's the one thing that has changed, has not the size dropped to 1.8 or something like that?
It's dropped to 1.8. We also have, I've been told that the property owner is prepared to develop a lease that will extend as largely as it has to ensure that all identified and required screening and other devices to ensure that the thing is screened as well as possible will be included in the lease. So it will extend beyond the fenced-in area.
That the application has been so modified?
I have been told verbally, yes.
No,
So-
Has the application been so modified?
At this point,
Because you're considering the application as it exists on the table today.
I'm just presenting that as information because
Okay.
people are going to want to know. That's been one of the concerns. So at this point,
Did we ever define who the applicant was?
the applicant, according to this, is Hudson Solar. And they're going to lease the site from the property owner, Barry Sherrod. So to the best of my knowledge, Hudson Solar is the applicant.
I guess I just don't see how you're going to take a piece of property like this and allow a special use without the owner being all or part, a co-applicant on this, because that's the person who owns the property.
They own it, but for example, if someone in a supermarket or a large shopping center, someone may own the shopping center, but someone wants to move a store in there, and the store has to go before the planning board for site approval, signage, and all that sort of stuff, the owner of the property is not necessarily going to be a co-applicant. The applicant is going to be the store owner who's going to lease the
But
property.
we know, because this is part of the record right now, that Hudson Solar is not going to be the owner. They're going to pass it on to an LLC.
If that is, at the present time, they are the applicant. What they're going to do in the future is something else again.
The conditions, if an approval were to be granted, the conditions of approval would run with the land. So anybody who was operating the facility would be required to meet the conditions of the permit.
Let's delve into this discussion that's been popping up in correspondence relative to the legality of carving out a chunk of this piece of property and leasing it out. Do we have to look at the whole site, the 12 acres or whatever it is, or are we just responsible for looking at the site of the farm?
Well, under seeker, off-site impacts are an appropriate area for, considering what the potential impacts are. So whether you consider the site to be the footprint of the leasehold or the property, or even if there are things that you determine are impacts that go off the property from across the street, those are legitimate considerations in the context of your seeker review. Just I think of it, Woody, like if you were to be, if you were putting a mall in, okay, or some other use that was going to be inviting a lot of traffic, one of the things that's routinely considered in the seeker review under those kinds of applications is what are the impacts of that traffic on traffic intersections that are not on the site but are located near the site and have the roadways that patrons of this particular new project are going to be traveling. And those get addressed all the time in seeker.
Michael, given I was out at the property again recently, and given what I've been told is going to be involved in screening, the dogwood, the deciduous trees, they're all over the property. It seems to me that they would have to lease a big chunk, if not almost all, of the property in order to continue to protect the screening that they say will protect it from view. So is that the plan, or?
That's something that we're going to try and discover, exactly what is required. And if that is required, then yes, the lease will have to reflect that.
Can we, John, require the applicant, Hudson Solar, to lease the entire property?
In the context of seeker, you can, what you can do is you can't force them to lease it, but what you can say is that, look, we've determined that the entire footprint of the property needs to be under the control of the operator in order so that they can be in control of key elements of screening. That is essential to
So they can
the decision.
So they can
And so-
mitigate the impact to
Yes.
the extent practical.
You're saying then the mechanism by which that would happen is up for discussion, like an easement, a lease
Yeah,
plus
yeah,
an easement or something?
You have pretty, the thing that is, so seeker is a tool for you to look at these issues and then to try to figure out how, how mitigation gets achieved, okay? And you have a lot of discretion under seeker to try to do that. And what your finding statement is, which is at that, let's say that you issue a positive declaration of an environmental impact statement. Your finding statement is where you express if you're going to say that the project can go forward, and here are the things that need to be done in order, in our judgment, in order to mitigate potential adverse impacts that we've identified to the maximum extent practical. And there's a whole range of things that are open to you to do that. We do different types of screening, or having, the footprint of the leasehold be larger.
Do we have the authority to limit use? To say, if this were to be approved as part of the mitigation, this land should be used for nothing else? And,
I think that if it's expressed in the terms of an environmental impact, I think you do have that authority. I did want to do a little digging on that myself, but I think that you would be able to say that, because I see that as a connection to, you want to be looking at what the whole impact of this is, and if this is really only part one of a second use of the property, then you may determine that there isn't really room on the rest of this property to be doing something else and to still be properly mitigating whatever the impacts are of the solar facility.
Okey doke.
Yep.
I will continue. Okay. B is government approvals, funding, or sponsorship, and identified as agencies either giving approvals or financial support would be our building department, certainly for building permits, planning board, Dutchess County Planning, and NYSERDA. And under coastal resources, is the project within a coastal area or waterfront area? It's not, but we do indeed have a local waterfront revitalization program, and the project site is not within a coastal erosion hazard area. Under planning and zoning, will administrative or legislative adoption or amendment of a plan, local law, ordinance, rule, or regulation be the only approvals which must be granted to enable the proposed action to proceed? And the answer here is no. And if no, proceed to section C2. Okay, C2, adopted land use plans. Do any municipally adopted city, town, village, or county comprehensive land use plans include the site where the proposed action would be located? And it says yes. If yes, does the comprehensive plan include specific recommendations for the site where the proposed action would be located? And this answer here is no. Is the site of the proposed action within any local or regional special planning district? For example, Greenway Brownfield Opportunity Area, designated state or federal heritage area, watershed management plan, or other? And the answer is no. Is the proposed action located wholly or partially within an area listed in an adopted municipal open space plan or an adopted municipal farmland protection plan? And the answer is no. At the present time, we don't have an open space plan or a farmland protection plan for the town of Rhinebeck.
I consider the county farmland protection plan to be
Well, but the town,
the county plan.
well, the county has one, but the town doesn't.
I don't think any towns do.
I think Red Hook does.
Isn't the county just a collection of the towns?
Yeah. I think Red Hook does have a farmland protection plan and also a funding mechanism. Zoning. Is the site of the proposed action located in a municipality with an adopted zoning law or ordinance? And of course, the answer is yes, and this is in the RC5 district. Is the use permitted or allowed by a special use permit, special or conditional use permit? And the answer is yes. Is a zoning change required as part of the proposed action? The answer is no. Existing community services. The school district is Rhinebeck. The police department is the Rhinebeck Police, Dutchess County Sheriff, State Police, and out in RC5, it's the Rhinebeck Fire Department is our fire service. And what parks serve the project site? Well, there aren't any serving the project site. Project details, proposed and potential development is a solar power plant. The total acreage of the site of the proposed action is 2.05 acres here. The acreage to be physically disturbed, 0.03 acres, and the total acreage of the projects where the project is going to be situated is owned or controlled by the applicant or project sponsor, 16.1 acres. And as John has said, although it says total acreage of the site of the proposed action is 2.05 acres, that is subject to what this board feels is required to mitigate any potential environmental problems. It could be the whole parcel. Is the proposed action an expansion of an existing project or use? The answer is no. Is the proposed action a subdivision or does it include a subdivision? Once again, the answer is no. Will the proposed action be constructed in multiple phases? And the answer given is no. Does the project include new residential uses? No. Does the proposed action include new non-residential construction? And the answer is yes. And it's the total number of structures is 20 racks. Dimension in feet, the largest proposed structure is 7.8 feet in height and 155 foot in width and 591 feet in length. Approximate extent of building space to be heated or cooled is zero. There will be none of that. Does the proposed action include construction or other activities that will result in the impoundment of any liquid, such as the creation of a water supply, reservoir, pond, lake, waste lagoon storage, or other storage? The answer is no. Project operations. Does the proposed action include any excavation, mining, or dredging during construction operations or both? The answer given is no. And let's see. Will the proposed action cause or result in alteration of, increase, or decrease in the size of or encroachment of any existing wetland, water body, shoreline, beach, or adjacent area? The answer is no. Describe how the proposed action would affect, it doesn't affect the water body. Will the proposed action cause or result in disturbance to bottom sediments? No.
That's all wetlands.
Yeah. But they have answers here. Will the proposed action use or create a new demand for water? The answer is no. Will the proposed action generate liquid waste? The answer is no. Will the proposed action disturb more than 1 acre and create stormwater runoff either from new point sources such as ditches, pipes, swales, curbs, gutters, or other concentrated flows of stormwater, or non-point sources such as sheet flow during construction or post-construction? The answer given is no. Does the proposed action include or will it use on-site one or more sources of air emissions, including fuel combustion, waste incineration, or other processes or operations? The answer given is no. Will any air emissions sources named in D2F above require New York State Air Regulation, Registration Air Facility Permit, or Federal Clean Air Act Title IV or Title V permit? The answer is no. Will the proposed action generate or emit methane? The answer given is no. Will the proposed action result in the release of air pollutants from open-air operations or processes such as quarry or landfill operations? The answer is no. Will the proposed action result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels or generate substantial new demand for transportation facilities or services? And the answer given is no. Will the proposed action for commercial or industrial projects only generate new or additional demand for energy? And the answer given is no. Hours of operation, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. That's during construction. During operations, it would be Monday through Friday, sunrise to sunset, and that would be the same on Saturday, Sunday, and holidays. Okay, will the proposed action produce noise that will exceed existing ambient noise levels during construction, operation, or both? The answer given is yes. Post-hammering will take 1 week. Other construction work is mechanical assembly and electrical work, which is quiet. Will the proposed action remove existing natural barriers and could act as a noise barrier or screen? The answer given is no. Will the proposed action have outdoor lighting? The answer given is yes. Describe sources, locations, height of fixtures, direction, aim, and proximity to nearest occupied structures. Switch service lights only. Will the proposed action remove existing natural barriers that could act as a light barrier or screen? And the answer given is no. Does the proposed action have the potential to produce odors for more than 1 hour per day? The answer given is no. Will the proposed action include any bulk storage of petroleum, combined capacity of over 1,100 gallons, or chemical products, 185 gallons, in above-ground storage or any other amount in underground storage? And the answer given is no. Will the proposed action, commercial, industrial, and recreational projects only, use pesticides, herbicides, insecticides during construction or operation? And the answer given is no. Will the proposed action, commercial, industrial projects only, involve or require the management or disposal of solid waste? And the answer given is no. Does the proposed action include construction or modification of a solid waste management facility? No. Will the proposed action at the site involve the commercial generation, treatment, storage of, or disposal of hazardous waste? The answer given is no. Under siting and setting of proposed action, existing land uses, and what we have checked here are forest, agriculture, residential, suburban, rural, non-farm, and other St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Land uses and cover types of the project site. Roads, buildings, and other paved or impervious surfaces, .06 acreage, and that would continue. Forested, 8.30, 8.30, and that would continue. Meadows, grasslands, or brushlands, non-agricultural, including abandoned agriculture, it's currently 7.80, and it will be reduced to 5.8, losing .2 acres. Agricultural includes active orchards, fields, greenhouses, and there is no active agriculture on the site at this time. Surface water features, there are no surface water features. There are no wetlands on the site. Non-vegetated bare rock, earth or fill, and the answer is given there is that there is none of that. Is the project site presently used by members of the community for public recreation? The answer is no. Are there any facilities serving children, the elderly, people with disabilities, schools, hospitals, licensed daycare centers, or group homes within 1,500 feet of the project site? And the answer given is no. Does the project site contain an existing dam? And the answer is no. Has the project site ever been used as a municipal, commercial, or industrial solid waste management facility, or does the project site adjoin property which is now or was at one time used as a solid waste management facility? The answer given is no. Have hazardous waste been generated, treated, and/or disposed of at the site, or does the project site adjoin property which is now or was at one time used to commercially treat, store, and/or dispose of hazardous waste? And the answer given is no. Potential contamination history. Has there been a reported spill at the proposed project site, or have any remedial actions been conducted at or adjacent to the proposed site? And the answer given is no.
Before you turn the page, Michael, go back to
Whoa.
the top of the page, facilities, et cetera. I don't know if we raised this before. Is the church within 1,500 feet, and does it have any of those services?
I think it does have probably some programs that they have there. I know they do have some programs.
We did have someone who goes to the church stand before us and say they do have
Some,
summer school, and they have church classes, Sunday school classes there.
and I think some other groups meet there as well.
You're right, they
Use the
rented out.
facility.
So
So,
I think that should probably be a yes.
I would say that would be a yes. That's what I was going to ask.
well, it's, the property, I believe, is adjacent to the project site, the church property.
It might be adjacent to the 16 acres.
But it may be, but the project itself may not be within 1,500 feet. Well,
don't
that's
know.
something we should check.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Even if we said no, I think it's our responsibility to list that in our reasoning, so we can just clarify the reason we said no was because,
It's not within 1,500 feet.
or it's not
Right.
contiguous to property, whatever
Right.
the site.
We can certainly do that, yes. Is the project site subject to an institutional control limiting property uses? No. Natural resources on or near project site. What is the average depth to bedrock on the project site? It has 7+ feet. Are there bedrock outcroppings on the project site? The answer given is no. Predominant soil types present on the site are Duchess, Cardigan, Complex, Rolling, Rocky, 100%. What is the average depth to the water table at the project site? And I have 20+ feet here. Drainage status of the project site, well drained 100% of the site. Approximate portion of proposed action site with slopes, and we have 0 to 10% of the site. Is there any unique geologic feature on the project site? The answer given is no. Under surface water features, does any portion of the project site contain wetlands or other water bodies, including streams, rivers, ponds, or lakes? And the answer given is no. Do any wetlands or other water bodies adjoin the project site? And the answer given is no. Okay. Is the project site in a designated floodway? No. Is the project site in the 100-year floodplain? No. Is the project site in the 500-year floodplain? No. Is the project site located over or immediately adjoining a primary, principal, or sole source aquifer? And the answer given is no. Okay. Identify the predominant wildlife species that occupy the project site, and the answer given is deer, which, not a big surprise. Does the project site contain a designated significant natural community? The answer is no. Does the project site contain any species of plant or animal that is listed by the federal government or New York State as endangered or threatened, or does it contain any areas identified as habitat for an endangered or threatened species? The answer given is no, and we have the habitat study of from Hudson, which would be perhaps more specific on this issue. Does the project site contain any species of plant or animal that is listed by New York State as rare or as a species of special concern? The answer given is no. Is the project site or adjoining area currently used for hunting, trapping, fishing, or shell fishing? The answer given is no. I know that there was, for a while out there in that area in Württemberg, a hunting club, something of that sort, and I understand they tended to traipse off property on some of the neighbors' properties, so there may have been some inadvertent hunting, certainly on the area or adjoining areas. Okay, designated public resources on or near project site. Is the project site or any portion of it located in a designated agricultural district certified pursuant to Agriculture and Ag and Markets? It is not in Ag District 20, although there are other properties along that area that are. Are agricultural lands consisting of high productive soils present? The answer given is no. Does the project site contain all or part of, or is it substantially contiguous to a registered national natural landmark? And the answer given is no. Is the project site located in or does it adjoin a state-listed critical environmental area? And the answer is no. Does the project site contain or is it substantially contiguous to a building, archaeological site, or district which is listed on or has been nominated by the New York State Board of Historic Preservation for inclusion on the state or national register of historic places? And the answer given is yes, and it's St. Paul's Lutheran Church. And I believe there are a couple of other historically designated buildings, if not contiguous, certainly within.
The inn should be listed now, isn't it, within plain sight?
Yeah, I'm assuming that that Württemberg Road is a user road, therefore the property lines go to the center line of the road. So,
But yeah, we should at least, bare minimum, make a note of it.
yeah, that would be contiguous. Is the project site or any portion of it listed in or adjacent to an area designated as sensitive for archaeological sites on the New York State Historic Preservation Office Archaeological Site Inventory? And the information we got from them is no. Have additional archaeological or historic sites or resources been identified on the project site? And the answer given is no. Is the project site within 5 miles of any officially designated and publicly accessible federal, state, or local scenic or aesthetic resource? And the answer given is yes, the Hudson River. And then it says the distance between the project and resource is 3.5 miles. I don't know how close it is Burger
You have the
Hill
Landsman Kill Trail, too, that
goes through, and I'm not sure how far Burger Hill is from here.
Officially designated?
The Landsman Kill Trail? It's not officially designated.
Well, that's, I think, the line.
Yeah, it's not officially.
I was wondering about River Road as a scenic road. Is that a designated road? Because if it's within 5 miles of the Hudson.
Yeah, River Road is a designated, is a
Yeah,
state designated.
is state designated.
So in addition to the river, it probably should be.
Be River Road as well. If the Hudson River is River Road would be.
I didn't realize you're a lefty.
Okay. Is the project site located within a designated river corridor? Well, no, it's not. And that's part one.
Could you read that last question about the designated? again?
About designated project?
Yeah.
Is the project site within 5 miles of any officially designated and publicly accessible federal, state, or local scenic or aesthetic resource? Is that the one?
Why wouldn't the trail be considered a local designated?
Well, it's not officially designated by anybody, except it's basically a handshake arrangement with the property owners that the Landsman Kill Trail goes through. It doesn't have any official sanction by any government body. And there's actually there are no leases, there are no...
You know, I know they go through my property.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's just, basically, it's a handshake. Yeah, they go through my property,
I
too.
don't know what officially means. Means it needs to have something filed in the office here?
I would guess something like that, or the town or the county or someone is actually, or maybe designated as part of the Greenway Trail or something like that. Okay, that's part one.
Okay, Michael, just as a refresher, might I suggest if these forms are online, that we can ask our secretary to send us, if we don't have them,
Yeah,
just send us copies so we can review them.
and I don't have part two.
I don't have, did I have these or something?
We did have this, yeah, we did have
I just
this.
pulled it out of the packet.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you have physical, I'm wondering if it's online.
Oh, yeah, no, but
Oh, we didn't get a copy of it though.
it was in the.
it wasn't the submittal packet, part
But
one.
we didn't get a copy of it, it was just in the main folder.
No, we did, yeah, we did.
Been a long time.
It was in one of those stacks that was.
But who
all
has part two?
Together.
You don't have a blank part two?
I don't have a filled-in part two.
Well, you have to fill in part two.
Well, that's what I figured, so. I thought we did, but I guess, we didn't.
I don't recall.
What is our goal for the rest of this evening?
Basically, to determine what additional information we're going to require, whether or not we feel that there are certain aspects, such as the visual, that should have a pos deck, and then a specific list of information and things, questions that we want answered. Basically, to determine, when we first started, there were any series of questions we had about habit.
It is, I agree.
True.
Did we ever get the George James thing? And I guess I don't understand what this was.
George, what George sent, he read through the report that they did.
Yeah.
And I called him to ask him about his report. And he said at this point, he felt that there were so many deficiencies in what Saratoga had provided. He felt that at this point, what would be best done is if we did something such as this and actually guided them in exactly what we needed, because any report he gave now probably wouldn't be very meaningful to us, because what he found was just a very deficient report, both in methodology and what they came up with. So he felt we'd be better off doing this.
But I would certainly be interested in hearing what he thinks the deficiencies are specifically.
In the discussion I had with the methodology, he thought, first of all, photo simulation is what you do now, and they didn't do that. He found the quality of the pictures, things like that, really didn't tell you much. They didn't identify very much.
Right.
That basically it was just not very well done. And it should be, probably after a process such as this, be properly directed to really do the job that we need to have done.
So we really need to sit and come up with a guideline, like we had mentioned, I think, in different meetings, saying we would like to know about this and this.
Yep,
and this.
yep, yep.
I think Ed just said something about Burger Hill being a resource.
But we also want to have a methodology used that really more accurately depicts, the potential impacts and the potential effectiveness of any mitigation measures.
I agree, and it should be the same game plan we use next month when another application comes.
For all of them, it should be for all of them.
Well, if it's a methodology that we're going to look at, we have to look at an industry accepted methodology.
Exactly.
That's standard across the board, not
Exactly.
one that fits this one today
Yep.
and that one tomorrow.
Yeah, that's,
And I think in my experience of working with George, someday it might be good to have him come up here and talk to you guys about, I mean, if as a board, you're going to be presented with these kinds of issues, visual impact assessments, and in the future, it might be a good idea for you to take some time and be worth paying him for a couple of hours to really learn
Yeah,
about.
there's got to be an
So,
industry standard out
There
there.
absolutely is, there absolutely is, and there's in other words, when you're, just to use one example, there's a standard whereby when photographs are being taken of a particular image, that, we now understand that you use a certain aperture and certain specifications in order to replicate what we see with our eye, which isn't necessarily what you get with a camera, because cameras change the scaling of images, depending on what kind of lens you're using.
Very,
So-
very good point.
Well,
So,
I've done ID work in criminal cases for years, and, there's a standard.
yep, there is a standard.
And you can
So-
just pull it up, it says visual impact methodology, right on the internet. So there's got to be a wealth of stuff.
Oh, I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is.
But wouldn't it make sense for us to go through that before we try to come up with additional kinds of information that we want? I mean,
Yes.
shouldn't we understand what the accepted methodology
Well,
is?
I think that if you were to follow, let's just say you were to follow a process for, where you would issue a positive declaration. So what you're saying is, okay, what we're going to do is we think that, see, the way that seeker's set up is that it's not necessarily to get to elements of proof at this first stage. What you're really trying to figure out is whether there are things that, where we acknowledge we don't understand everything about a particular impact, and there's more that we need to know. And that's what the environmental impact statement process is supposed to be about, supplying you with that knowledge, and it provides a structure and set of rules for how that gets done. So, for instance, you would say, we think that there needs to be additional study done with regard to visual assessment, and then as part of the scoping, and I think we should ask George for a sort of bullet list of his comments about the methodology that was used by Saratoga Associates and whatever other comments that he has. And then that would be part of the scoping process, because part of scoping is, that's where the board ends up giving the menu of things that have to be done to the applicant. That's where we decide what's going to be in the environmental impact statement. And so the applicant, and the reason that there is advantage to the applicant from that is because it at least, it puts us, everybody's playing by the same set of rules at that point. And so the applicant is told, look, here's, we want a visual impact study that's to these specifications. And so when the environmental impact statement comes back to you, it contains that material.
My concern with that, and I think you said this earlier, we're going to come up with a bulleted list and identify the specific issues we would like addressed, so that they only have to focus on those, but not fully understanding the methodology or what we should be looking for down the road. I mean, how do I come back a second time and say, whoa, wait a minute, we thought about it again, and we would like you to do this as well? I feel like we're giving, once we go on record for giving a list of 6 things we'd like addressed, and they check them all off, we have no choice but to let them move forward, even though we may screw up.
Well, I think for everybody's sake, the object is to do it in one swipe if that's possible.
Agreed.
Okay? And you would have to, my suggestion to you would be that, let's say theoretically you were to issue a positive declaration. One of the next steps you want is you would want to have a consultation with your visual impact assessment consultant before you issue your scoping document, so that you do have that understanding, and that, so both for your benefit and for the benefit of the applicant, that the list of things that they go off to do as part of the environmental impact statement represents a complete list of what the board needs to see in order to make a decision.
So it sounds like what you're suggesting is that we ask George to join us for a meeting, and basically for the scoping session, to help guide us in determining exactly what we need to know in order to make a proper decision.
Yeah, and I'd suggest 2 things. I'd suggest that you do get just for the board's own record, get George to put something on paper.
I will do, we can do
So
that.
that you can distribute that, and so the board members can read that at their leisure and understand it. And then I'd have him be available somehow to be able to answer your questions about that after. But before, at a point in time that before you actually finalize your scoping document, so that you're moving ahead with what you feel is, that you feel very informed about what the standards are, what his comments are, and what it is that you want to see in the next stage.
Would the best way to do that to be to have him come and meet with us?
I think that
As opposed
that
to-
would be my suggestion, because that would allow a back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for something like this, I think you'd benefit greatly from being able to have a dialogue with him.
And we could work with him basically to set up the scope.
Yeah, so exactly.
And-
Make sure we're not missing
If it's
something.
restricted to the kinds of issues that you've discussed so far, I mean, his area of expertise is really covering the largest.
Right, the visual aspects of it, yeah.
Right, but all of this is possible to do even if there were a negative declaration, correct? I mean,
Well,
the George,
I think what we would do is,
Here's what the other way to do it is, that, and sometimes this happens on other projects, where you postpone your determination of significance and you keep asking, you continue to ask the applicant to furnish additional information in the hope that that additional information gives you maybe applicants sometimes encourage that because they're looking to try to get to a point where you're comfortable with giving a negative declaration, because they typically are not, keen on doing an environmental impact statement. The problem with that particular method of going about things, I think it has problems on both sides of the wall. For the applicant, there really isn't, I've seen that process end up going on for many, many months.
Well, more than a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, where are they?
Absolutely. As material comes into you and other questions arise from the new material that you've been supplied. And, so the applicant, there really isn't a structure or a rule book that's applying to that process from the applicant's standpoint. And the same is true for people who want to comment on that material. Neither are there rules set down for public participation as part of that. It's kind of an ad hoc process, and it suffers from the defects that those kinds of ad hoc processes are vulnerable to. My feeling about that is, and I've said this in other boards that I've appeared in front of, that if you execute the positive declaration properly and in an expeditious way, you can cover the same ground, in my opinion, with roughly the same cost to the applicant and in roughly the same time period. And everybody gets to benefit from the structure that goes along, with the set of rules that's been set. So there's a procedure to follow, and everybody knows what to do. And you come out of it also, the other thing is that at the end of that process, you issue a finding statement, and of course you have all the flexibility and that goes along with issuing findings that contain conditions that you think are necessary to address the issues.
but John, don't you have to have a good reason for a positive declaration?
Well, you have to determine as a board that there's one or more significant adverse environmental impacts.
Potential significant.
And if you determine in instances where.
Potential significant.
Potential
Yeah,
significant.
potential.
You don't even have to approve it.
And
you
yes,
just
we have to define the reason why we're making that
Yeah,
determination
exactly.
for the record. But don't we have a timeline, New York State, with responding and scoping and preparing and?
Yeah, there's a timeline for that whole process.
But when does the,
They
According
don't get observed very often, honestly.
okay, so according to this, by mutual consent of both parties,
Yeah.
you can extend that timeline.
Yeah.
But if one party decides they don't want to extend it, I'm assuming that,
Yeah.
You know, you can-
I will just tell you, in the court cases, there are very few consequences to.
Okay.
With the essential rule that the essential perspective that the courts take to those kinds of questions is that the intent of seeker is that the protection of the environment not be sacrificed on the altar of meeting the timeline. But I think a duty is owed by a lead agency to the applicant, to everybody associated with the process, to try to execute the process in a timely fashion, move everything along.
If Mr. Jones came here, would it, one, be a public hearing? Two, would the applicant be allowed, or will he be banned from coming to listen to his story? I mean, I'd like to understand that.
No, I don't, it would not be a public hearing. I wouldn't recommend that it be part of a public hearing. What you really need, George would be your consultant. And I think since you guys are the decision makers, you really need to have the dialogue with him to worry yourselves about the decision that you're making. But it would be part of, I would suggest that it be part of an open meeting, a meeting that's open to the public.
Well, like what we're doing right now.
Including the applicant can come
Okay.
and can hear what he has to say. I think a lot of people would learn a lot from,
Well, basically, it's what we're doing right now with you and Art,
yeah.
working with our consultants in terms of legal issues. We would just be doing this on visual issues, visual impacts, things of that sort.
Yeah. And of course, any written documents that George produced would be part of the record.
Public
would be
record, yeah.
available to the public record.
Well, then, what I would suggest, Michael, is that this organization contact Mr. Jones and have him come down and talk to us about, one, the problems that he noted about Saratoga, and also explain to us and to anyone else who is interested what the industry standards are, hard copy as well, not just verbally. Okay? And the sooner we can do that, I think the better off we're going to be to do a visual assessment.
And I would like to ask him, a third thing is to assist us in identifying what we should be looking at, because I think he's...
Well, hopefully, the industrial standards would explain that.
But help us to
methodology.
actually, to put the scoping document together, using his expertise.
Well, beyond the road methodology, the
Right.
question of how that methodology is applied in terms of
Exactly.
geographic coverage and things in this situation.
Exactly, how we
And
would use
George
this.
will be able also to explain to you what tools are available.
Right. But what I can do is,
You may have to have a special meeting.
well, that's it, to see,
During the daytime.
to see what George's availability is.
What I'd suggest, Michael, and I think we had this discussion before, that there's one other action that I believe the board needs to take this evening. The board has scheduled continuation of the public hearing for the next meeting of April 16th. I think that's clearly premature in terms of the board needs to have further discussion of environmental review. The public hearing, while it could be opened, there's really nothing new to examine at this point in time, nothing new for the neighbors or concerned citizens to comment upon. And in fact, taking it another step further, the board can do nothing in terms of closing the public hearing or anything of that sort until either a negative declaration is issued or a positive declaration is issued and a draft environmental impact statement accepted. So I believe quite clearly that the board needs to, as part of this meeting, consider a resolution deferring the scheduled continuation of the public hearing from April 16th to some guessed date down the road. I don't know if it's an indefinite date down the road, or you basically target one of your meeting dates down the road, or whatever.
We have one meeting in May.
Because his accessibility might be limited. He may
Well,
not
that's
be
it.
available for whatever reason.
Well,
So,
that's it.
based on his input, then we could probably reschedule after that.
Okay, we have to do something tonight, though, if we're not going to do it on the 16th. we
Yeah,
have
that's
to
right.
put it off.
You need an action this
Do you
evening.
want to just put it off to May 7th as a holding date?
I
No?
don't think that's enough time.
Because our next
We're already
meeting
lined up a tremendous
Yeah.
amount.
for May,
I would
Yeah.
think June before you really can.
What do you feel, John? I mean, realistic in terms of time frame.
Well,
George, there needs to be consultation with George, and then there's going to be a turnaround on it. I would trust production of additional information, regardless of the form of that additional information. Whether it's
well,
additional...
I don't know, I mean, let's talk about that for a second. I mean, I don't know, in some ways, I might envision that you guys have a consultation with George, and then you're in a position to fill out the rest of Part 2 of the EAF? And then you're in a position to make a determination of significance.
So, I mean, in the most ideal of worlds, I guess, in terms of schedule, George would be available for consultation with the board on the 16th of April, as a for instance.
Yes.
And then the board could proceed either that evening with further consideration or schedule its further consideration
During that meeting?
for the May meeting.
Would we have time on the April 16th, given the agenda we already
You've got a
have?
brief agenda on April 16th.
It's brief?
Well, it's going to, here's the thing. I want to be careful about, I do think that,
You don't have a brief agenda, you've got a 7-item agenda.
yeah, I mean, I think it's important just for the board generally, for you to keep business moving forward.
Right.
Keep the review process moving forward in as expeditious a manner as you can manage, given what you've got to do. How much effort will follow your meeting with George is all going to depend on what you all take away
Right.
from that meeting and where that leaves you. When you take what you learned from that meeting and then you turn around and look at the materials that you have in front of you so far. And I don't know what the answer to that's going to be. It'll depend.
Right now, an instigating factor until we understand what his schedule is
Yeah.
and what,
Yeah.
then based on that, we can move forward.
But he's
And in
the
either
biggest
event-
factor,
He's
not
the-
the only factor.
Yeah.
Oh, he's the gate,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
But in either event, you're going to be asking Mark, there's going to be a drafting job that will be the next step on this when you sort of decide what you'll take a straw poll about your determination of significance, and then based on the reasoning that supports whatever your decision is, then you're going to be asking Mark to draft determination of significance for you for the record to be submitted and circulated to you, and then probably voted on it the next time you're coming together.
Yeah, I'll tell you, at this point, it's going to the other side. Even if it were a negative declaration, it would be a multi-page document.
Oh, absolutely.
It would not
I
simply
agree.
be a
I
motion.
agree. Getting back to what
Yeah.
Richard said, there's a responsibility to explain, in detail, the reasons in support of whatever it is that you decided, and that applies in either direction.
Responsibility to the public and responsibility to the town to cover our,
Well, and your responsibility
Responsibility to the
to
state.
as a lead
Yes,
agency.
state.
so, but the other thing I see as a big question that's going to come up is the economic impact. It's been brought up by many people. Even today, I have someone who offered their professional opinion to us, saying there won't be any. And for every one person there, there's somebody else that says there will be. So I'd like a clearer picture on that whole, because that's part of the economic, is one of the deciding factors in our secret determination, right?
It can be a factor, yeah.
It's part of that whole community character situation, too.
Yes. Community character, what people want their community to consist of. How they see it.
So I think you first need to dispense with the matter of the April 6th continuation.
Right.
Because that's what's on the record right now is happening.
Well, if we don't feel May is soon enough, first meeting in June?
Well, what is the harm of
Continuing to May 7th and then just...
May 7th?
If you don't make it.
If you don't make it,
Right, just do it again.
I think it's important to be shooting for.
You could make that.
And
Okay.
I don't think it's crazy. I mean,
No. Well, let's make it May 7th. I mean, if we get a resolution to continue this public hearing to May 7th, not April 16th. What time do we want to do it?
It's not earlier than 7:30 because you've got 4 public hearings at the beginning. Well, you scheduled them earlier this evening.
Yeah.
You scheduled 4 continuations, not 4, you have 4 new applications. And
What about, why don't we shoot for 8 o'clock and then?
Shoot for 8 o'clock, that's more reasonable, probably.
But we're going to try and get George James here earlier.
We're
You're
going
gonna try to get George
I'm going to try to get him for the
for
16th. This is,
What, could we have a special meeting, perhaps?
if necessary, we can do that too, but this is just, the first step here is to just move the public hearing from the 16th of April to May.
And I know he doesn't have a car. I know that in other times
Uber.
that we've had him move up here, I think he's going to much prefer to come up here, even if it's at the end of the day.
It's a nice train ride.
Yeah,
George in the city? Is that where you-
Yeah.
Well, could we shoot for that day and perhaps try to tag him on at the beginning of our meeting earlier, maybe at 5:30?
okay, well,
or
do it,
5?
the first thing I want to do is move the public hearing from
I make
April
that
16th.
motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good,
The other
okay.
thing, I just want to plant the seed in your mind is that, the other reason I think that a special meeting might not be a bad idea is I think there'd be a benefit to all of you to be able to come together and just be thinking about this.
I think you're right,
Mm-hmm.
and not be tired.
dealing with
Anything else.
a bunch of other business. And I think it's going to be time well spent because you know that this isn't going to be the only solar facility that's going to be applied for in Rhinebeck.
I absolutely concur.
It's already not the only one.
So the kind of things that are of concern to members of the community in this are going to be things that's going to happen again. And so the learning that you're able to accomplish in connection with this application is something that you're going to be able to put to good use, I think, on other, not just for solar, but anything that would come forward that would, a cell tower or other thing that might involve, significant visual impact. So anyway, I think that a special meeting might be nice for you to be able to just do that.
Well, can I make a special suggestion here? What I will do is I will call George and see when he's available.
Yes.
Then, noting when he's available, circulate potential times when he's available by email. I know that, I don't think we have any real problem doing that, to find out when everyone's available, to come up with a time when everyone can actually
Yeah,
make
you
a
wanna
meeting with
have,
him.
Get some times from George.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know, Gretchen can do it or we can do it for you. Just send a doodle poll around to everybody.
Well, I'll call George tomorrow and tell him what we
Do we have any
need.
noticing requirements for that kind of a special meeting?
For a special meeting, I don't know the answer to that.
We have to notice the public, but
Isn't it 48-hour posting or something like that?
Yeah, just posting it.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to notify the newspapers, and newspapers don't put anything,
In.
you don't put anything in.
And we'll put it on the town
But I think
website.
Certainly putting it on the website.
48
Put it on the
hours on the
website.
website is more than sufficient.
But
I would
is-
say that, it might be a good idea to, although not required under the law, it might be, that some of the stakeholders in this particular action or folks that are known to the board because they reported the public hearing, and it would be a nice thing to reach out to them.
We can inform them, and then hopefully they'll spread the word to anyone else who would like to attend.
I get notices when they have special town board meetings and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the town newsletter,
Yeah.
is the email newsletter. but-
Some people get it, a lot of people
Yeah, but
don't.
sometimes you
But
look at it.
also the
sometimes
special
you don't.
notices, the town has changed its special meeting from Monday to
Right.
Thursday.
They do that, but a lot of people aren't on that aren't on that
Wow.
email thing, so they
You can
don't.
sign up.
Yeah, I know, but anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call George. I'm going to ask him first for a written report on what he felt were deficiencies and how he felt they could be improved or should have been improved. And secondly, for times when he could join us for a
Does the town
meeting.
board have to approve that for the financial piece of it?
I don't think so. We have education money in our budget.
It's escrow.
Well, it's escrow, but also we do have education money in our budget that this could, maybe we can get 2 hours credit for this.
Yeah,
We'll do birds with one stone,
Why not?
you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how George is going to charge you for it, but
Right.
maybe, use the education budget for his travel time.
Right, and then
He's just
escrow.
talking about this as he's one of your consultants.
Right.
Handle through the escrow the way it works.
We can do that. Okay. Well, I will do my best to get a hold of him as quickly as possible and circulate dates, and we'll see if we can't nail something down.
And in the meantime, board members, as a group, you should take, Gretchen handed out to you the part 2 of the
Right.
EAF. And it'll probably speed things for all of you guys to take a look at that on your own and fill it out for yourselves
Yep.
and figure out what your answers to it are, and then you'll know when you come around to this later, you can say, hey, anybody have large impact to this?
Simple
And
question,
then-
Michael, do you need a quorum for a special meeting?
I don't,
You should have one for this one.
Only if we're gonna make a motion, though, we don't
well,
need a quorum.
I'm gonna circulate dates.
You're not gonna take any action.
No, we're not going to take any action, and I'll circulate dates and hopefully get at least, try to come up with something that can accommodate as many people as possible. And I guess the other thing that we're hoping to get, we'll need to get from the applicant at some point, is a narrative responding to those 14 general standards for a special use permit, because many of them do speak to community character. A number of the questions in there are specific to that, and the impact a project could have.
Why, if you don't mind my saying so, why don't you get a sensation about where you're gonna go? And I guess what I'm looking at is that if I were an applicant, I'd want to be just doing things once.
Oh, absolutely.
And so if you think you need that information to answer questions on part 2 of the EAF, then maybe you have to have that ahead of time, but I suspect not. I suspect that information might be more useful to you later.
Certainly possible.
I don't know. You'll have to look through and do some thinking about, answering the community character sections on EAF Part 2.
Fair enough. So, we're not going to have a public hearing on this on the 16th. We'll see what we do on the 7th of May. I will get dates to all of you as soon as George can give me information about when he's available. Is there any time when people during the day absolutely cannot make a meeting during the week?
I can't do early mornings.
Okay, so it should be
I
afternoon,
prefer afternoon at least.
like maybe 2 o'clock on or something like
I
that?
can manage as long as I have.
And I gotta tell you, George
Yeah,
won't want to be
okay.
here at 9:30.
No. Probably not. Okay. Well, that's where we stand then. Could I hear a motion to adjourn? Actually, does anyone else have anything else they want to say? Could I hear a motion to adjourn?
Done.
All in favor? Stand adjourned. Thank you all.